What does your list want from your emails? The answers from my guest, Kate Doster, surprised me. Listen in to our conversation on this episode of the Speaking Your Brand podcast. More and more women are making an impact by starting businesses, running for office, and speaking up for what matters. With my background as a TV political analyst, entrepreneur, and speaker, I interview and coach purpose-driven women to shape their brands, grow their companies, and become recognized as influencers in their field. This is Speaking Your Brand, your place to learn how to persuasively communicate your message to your audience. Hi there, and welcome to the Speaking Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Carol Cox. We are continuing the series that we're doing called The Medium is the Message. This is to help us as entrepreneurs, marketers, and content creators to make the best use of the various platforms that are out there. So we kicked off this series back in November talking about podcasting, and then we did public speaking, video. Last week was all about television, and today is about our email list. So this is something that I know I have experimented a lot with the types of emails that I send out to my email list. I've done fancy newsletter styles with lots of content, lots of links, lots of calls to action. I've sent plain emails with personal stories and no styling with maybe one or two links in it. So I've definitely experimented over the months and over the years. And what I have found is that our open rate stays very consistent, but the personal emails with some type of story in there, some type of experience, definitely get the most engagement and the most replies from people. And so I wanted to bring an email expert on to talk about what does the medium of email want in order to be the most effective. If we think about how we post on Instagram versus TikTok versus LinkedIn versus Twitter is different. And we're going to have a whole episode on social media coming up in a couple of weeks. But then how we think about the emails that we send should be different than the posts that we do on social media. And I know a lot of times I'm guilty of this. I just copy paste like an email newsletter. I'll copy that, maybe change a couple of things and post it on LinkedIn. But I know that's not the most effective use of either platform. So as recipients of emails in our inboxes, what do we want when we open our inboxes? And the answers from my guest, Kate Doster, surprised me. You're going to love this episode. Kate has fantastic energy and she is such a great guest. She's the host of the Inbox Besties podcast, and she has lots of resources to make your emails better, including a free resource that she tells us about at the end of our conversation today. And all of the links are also in the show notes. In our conversation, Kate and I talk about what our brains want when we check our email inbox, and I find this fascinating. We also talk about the different ways that email can be used for the goals that we have, whether it's brand awareness, thought leadership, or sales. Kate tells us what entrepreneurs often get wrong about our email list. And we also talk about what's working well with email right now. So the length of email, the format, the type of content, etc. And Kate actually gives me some on-the-spot coaching, so to speak, about how to better frame this particular podcast episode that we're doing here today. So I know you're going to love this episode. Enrollment is now open for our next Thought Leader Academy that starts in January 2022. If you're ready to shift from being an expert presenter to a thought leader, this is the program that you need. Let me tell you about a recent consult call that I had for a woman who joined the Academy. She said that she really is ready to find her thought leadership message, and she's having trouble though figuring out what exactly her idea is. She has lots of ideas and she needs help pinpointing which is the best one and how they all make sense together. And I was like, oh yes, this is exactly why we created this program, because we know how hard it is when you just have so many different ideas in your head and in your Google Docs and on your journals, and you're trying to figure out which direction to go. And that's why in our academy, and along with the weekly group Zoom calls, which are training and coaching, you also get one-on-one coaching calls because we know how valuable that is. She also said that she recognizes that she needs the accountability and the support in the community to keep the momentum going as she's working to put herself out there as a speaker and as a thought leader for 2022. If this sounds like you, if you're ready to do the same thing, I invite you to get all of the details and to apply at speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the podcast, Kate.
I am so excited to be here.
I am too. You have come across my radar as someone who is an expert in email and in email marketing. I've heard you on a couple of podcasts over the past few months. And so I was excited to reach out to you to bring you on to talk all about how we can make our email communications better with our email list. As entrepreneurs, as content creators, as speakers, as podcasters, is how can we better connect with our audiences and recognizing that email is its own medium, it's its own channel that wants certain things from us as the person writing the emails, but then also whoever is on the receiving end who's reading the emails. So Kate, can you tell me a little bit about how did you fall in love with email?
Sure. So first of all, I love the show. And it's one of my goals for 2022, because hopefully we can get back out in the world. I'm speaking, I'm binge listening to everything. I'm Carol's the best, just writing on all these notes. So I just wanted to thank you for putting on such a great show. So I started off as a copywriter with a W. So not laws, everybody. It means I got paid to write words that make people take action. And so when you're a copywriter, particularly one that's online based, you write a myriad of things, sales pages, about pages, home pages. And I fell in love with writing launch copy. That was the thing. I loved landing pages and I loved launch copy. And launch copy primarily is in the inbox. And so that was just sort of the thing that I went with for a while. And then, like many service providers, you do a lot, you help your clients with a lot, but you want to have that bigger impact. Again, a lot of why you guys are listening to the show, you want to speak because you want to scale and you want to help more people. So that's how I kind of transitioned into teaching email marketing instead of just writing it for other people.
Kate, I think you're one of the very few entrepreneurs who could put the words together. I love writing launch copy.
It's just really fun. My whole philosophy is that you've got to treat people like people. And whether you want to admit it or not, everyone, let's just be honest. The things that you pay for, you take more seriously. And the things that you pay even more for, you take even more serious. So for my people, I consider us the nice guy group or the nice persons group, because we're trying to be more inclusive. So we're the nice people. And the thing is that you need to give people a price tag on something so they take it seriously. They actually go through it, they learn it, they implement it. Because we all have those freebies that are just hanging around. Or we've all listened to amazing podcast episodes and be oh yeah, I really need to work on that. And then we never do. But then, when we actually hire a speaking coach, when we actually go and buy that course, I'm not saying it needs to be $1 gajillion, but once people have skin in the game, they will try to get their money's worth, which means now you can do that one thing you wanted to the whole entire time, which is just to help people.
I'm totally with you on that. So let's talk about the different things that email can be used for, the different goals. So, when I think about the goals, especially for those who listen to the Speaking Your Brand podcast, they want brand awareness. They want more people to know about who they are, what they do, kind of the work that they do. Sales for sure, direct response sales from email. And then also thought leadership. We talk a lot about on this podcast about this idea of thought leadership and putting your opinions and your ideas out there. So for Kate, I know obviously launch copy is very specific. You're selling something. And so you're getting people to take an action, whether it's, sign up and pay on the page or do a consult call application, what have you. How do you think about email for brand awareness and thought leadership? And are there other goals that you have seen email work well for?
I love that you bring that up. I think that it's not just for sales, although technically you're always selling because you're selling the fact that you get your people. You're selling the fact that you can help them with something. You're selling them the fact that you are a thought leader, that you are reliable, that you are the person that they want to be with. I mean, I would love to say that I'm the only one ever wants to learn email marketing from, but it's not the truth, right? So I want to be somebody's favorite. And so by showing up in their inbox consistently, that is how you get that brand awareness. I know that there are certain newsletters that usually tend to come out on Sunday mornings. I don't know why, where people will just write these longer emails, and longer emails are fine if they're interesting. And we'll talk about the difference between a boring long and a short, nice long one as well. And that's where you can really sort of have that leadership, that making that people think. It's just such a great place to build a relationship because people, if you think about it, on Instagram, most of us are probably following at least 500 people. Are we subscribed to 500 newsletters? No. So if you have somebody who's allowing you in their inbox, That is huge. So again, yeah, you can talk about upcoming events that you can have. Yeah, you can talk about success stories that other people have had. Yeah, you can just let people know like, hey, even sometimes you can just treat your list like friends. Hey, I'm looking for more speaking gigs, or hey, I'm very casual, like, hey guys. I probably wouldn't say guys, depending again on your brand voice. Hey everyone, so I'm going to be in Tulsa this weekend doing a chat. You can talk about the chat, maybe link to the event. I need to know, where's the place to get tacos? So if you were there or you have traveled there, please reply back and tell me about these tacos, right? So one, anyone who's like a taco person is going to be like, oh my gosh, Carol, so cool. She likes tacos, right? Anyone who lives there is going to be like, oh, you need this place or that place or this place. So that is how you're going to start building that relationship. So then people will start talking about you. I think they have a phrase for it now. I can't remember, but it's basically where you feel like somebody online is your actual friend or your actual best friend. I'm like, that's Perry something. I should really remember the term, but that's the amazing things that you can do with email. It just doesn't have to be the traditional, online, course approach, that sort of a thing. You can actually express yourself. You can ask questions of your audience. That's one of the things that I really love to do the best. Like, yes, you can do your pontificating and your leadership, but it's like, have you ever felt like this? Have you done this yourself? You can kind of like let your guard down, admit a little bit of your mistakes when people feel like they can relate to you. Like, oh, even if, the expert has messed up every now and then they feel like you're my person and I'm going to tell everyone about you.
Okay, this is so helpful. I'm thinking about, we kicked off this series, the medium is the message, talking about podcasting, because obviously I've been podcasting for over 250 episodes. And the way I described it was that podcasting is a very intimate medium because people listen in their earbuds, they listen every week and they get to know the host and they feel like the host is their friend. And then they see the host at a conference and they feel like they know the host. And of course the host has no idea who the listener is. But I really never thought about email as an intimate medium like podcasting is. So I'm so glad that you brought that up and using it in a more casual, friendly way, because I think of it very much from like a business, like even though I write from an like myself perspective, I feel like it's very businessy. So I'm glad to hear you bring this up. So that leads me to my next question, Kate, which is, what do entrepreneurs get wrong about their email list and sending emails to their list?
One, I think that they're confusing it with writing an English paper from 10th grade. Your English teacher, and I'm sorry if there's any teacher speakers here, your English teacher is wrong. Basically everything, in my case, it was a he, and he was not a fan of Lake Kate over here. So I won't say that I've got some hard feelings about my English teacher, but everything that they were taught you was wrong. Like about paragraphs being super long, never using contractions, using $10 words, all that. No, none. This is why I love this series so much about the medium. Why do people go to their inbox? To procrastinate. They're going there for a shot of dopamine. So if you are trying to, and this happens especially a lot with content creators and speakers too, when you're so passionate about helping your people, you want to give them a million tips on how to do things and save them for a million things. That's not the brain space that somebody is going into their inbox with. They're going in with like, oh man, like I should be writing this report, or maybe I should be pitching these people, or God, this kid's soccer game is so boring. Like that's the thing that they're going in there for. Your blog posts, your podcast, your YouTube videos, your paid speeches that you've got behind paywalls. That's where they want to go do their hardcore learning, because perception and frame of mind matters so much. And the only story that I can ever think of, so if you've been following me for a while, you've heard this one, when it comes to perception, the biggest fight my high school boyfriend and I, he has college too, ever got into, we were at the mall and we went to those little candy machines. And so he was eating M&Ms and he wasn't paying attention. So I threw one of my lemon Skittles in his hand and he was not paying attention. So when he shoved them all in his mouth, the look on his face was so bad. He was so mad at me. And I'm like laughing. Like now, like on TikTok, you see couples like pranking each other all the time. All I did was put in a Skittle into his milk chocolatey goodness. That's what he was expecting. But instead, he got something that was super tart and he wasn't expecting it. So it was very, very grumpy. So that's why you can have a little bit of that conversation. You can have that intrigue. And then it's like, and if you want my other tips, or if you want this too, or you're really down with this, then click here. You send them to the medium where their brain is going to be there.
Oh, Kate, that is so incredibly helpful. And I love how you say that, when we're going through email, either we're looking for that shot of dopamine or procrastinating on something else. And also, I feel like for me, when I'm going through my email inbox, I'm looking for to-dos, like, the emails, like I need to do something. I need to reply to this person. And it can feel like really overwhelming sometimes, especially when you get behind. And it can feel a little bit like, oh, I have another email to reply to. And then I can imagine you get someone's newsletter and it makes you happy.
Yeah.
And it makes you smile. And then you're like, oh, I would look forward to this again because it's going to give me that little bit of a release from all the other work that I'm doing.
Exactly. And I know that everyone gives like the promotions tab in Gmail, like the worst name. You realize that people only go to that, like that one when they're looking to not have to reply back and not be burdened. Right. And so when you get to be just by name, their favorite, your subject lines don't even matter at that point. When you are still trying to earn your spot as their absolute favorite, I mean, honestly, there's probably like a handful, probably not all the newsletters I'm subscribed to, but there's like 2 or 3. I don't even know if their subject lines are ever. I just see like, oh, they've emailed me. I'm going to open it because I know it's entertaining. I can learn something. They respect the medium. They get me. And so don't be afraid to be in the promotions tab. I mean, the spam was the one that nobody ever sees, but promotion is fine. That's where the fun gets to happen.
That is so true. I actually put people's newsletters in the promotions tab for that reason, so I can go back and read them when I want that, sense of entertainment or relaxation.
And again, you don't have to be like big and goofy and like I say things like spammer face. You need to be who you are. That's one of my biggest tips when it comes to writing emails. Before you hit send, you need to read it out loud. Not in your head, out loud. And if it does not sound good coming out of your mouth, then you need to change it. If it does not sound like you need to change it because that's what you're going for. And even if you're like, Kate, I usually work with corporate executives. I need to be very buttoned up and professional. You can spice up what your greeting is to whatever fits. It's okay. You can shove that in there. It turns out that professionals are professionals. Like, you're good. You can use that in there.
Have you ever recommended to someone or used or done this yourself where you've just voice dictated what your email message would be so that it's literally words that you would say out loud versus words that you would type?
Yeah. I have people do that all the time, especially I honestly think that talkers make the best email marketers. We're not very good at blog posts, but we are the best at emails because we're just chatting with a friend. And friends and people we get. Having to sit down and be formal and all that stuff, that we don't get. But relationships we get, people we get. So you can, go like the paid route with something like a rev.com. But honestly, everyone's got Google Docs. You go to Google Docs. I believe it is, I'm going to check right now while we're on air, everybody. I believe you go over there, it's in tools, and then it's voice to text. You have to pick your language if it's the first time that you're ever using it. And now for free, you're getting that voice dictation because sometimes you just need to get things out of your head. Yeah, it's under tools. Voice typing is what it's called. And you can do that. You can talk into your iPhone. Again, after you have it written, do you need to go back and make sure that it got the right words? Absolutely. Do you need to make sure that your paragraphs, again, even if you're going professional here, are less than 2 sentences? Yes, you do, because people don't want to read 3-sentence paragraphs anymore. They want things that are skimmable. So that's why, you bold some things that are super important. Maybe you throw in, a picture or a mock-up, you speaking on stage, if that's what you're getting at, the picture of the taco, if that's what you're trying to help with, the after effect. Honestly, it can just be a casual one of you sometimes. So throw those in there and it will make your emails more engaging because people like to read, but they also like pictures.
Yeah, that's so true, Kate. So let us talk a little bit about what you see is working well with email right now. And of course, I know it depends on that particular business and their audience and things like that. But, you work with a lot of kind of service-based entrepreneurs, which is what I am and what many of our listeners are. So you mentioned about it's okay to have long emails as long as they're not boring. So can you talk a little about length, format, the type of content, frequency, et cetera?
Sure. I think that just like they say, variety is the spice of life. Same thing with your emails. If you want to be known as the person that writes long form emails, then sure. But if you want to spice it up and change it every once in a while, honestly, the other day, and I'm known for emails, I think my email was about 3 sentences and then it was click here to listen. And it was like this little private podcast thing that I put together just to like spice it up and have some fun. You are allowed to do that. Think about when you're thinking of length. Do you want to sit down and read the encyclopedia or the dictionary or even eHow? Like that is the most dry, boring thing ever. Like nobody wants to read that. It is the worst. But even like blog posts, right? Even though the mediums are slightly different, you'll read something that's a little bit more engaging, right? You'll read something that, again, sounds like that it's written from a human. When you are using those smaller paragraphs, when you are not bolding everything, but you put some things in bold, you italicize a little bit. So that way you think to yourself, okay, if I was a skimmer, what would I look for? That also goes with if you want somebody to click on a link somewhere, besides just having the words like click here, tap here, whatever verb you want to have, make sure if you know there's a benefit or a result or something that people want to avoid, something they want to get, right? That highlight is linked out to where you want to go. So say if you guys were, say taking on, private clients for some type of package, right? It would be something like if you're telling Janet's story, one of the things that you're going to say is how Janet booked $30,000 worth of speaking gigs. So the words $30,000 worth of speaking gigs is going to be hyperlinked to where they're going because now it's blue. And they'll read that and they'll see it because that's what they want. So that's how you sort of play to it, because some people will read every word. Other people will just skim. So we're kind of playing to both.
Oh, that's really helpful. Let's talk about frequency. So I know that like for myself, we send a weekly email newsletter every Tuesday, which is the day that the new podcast episode airs. So, it's kind of connected to the email newsletter for that week. And then when we are in a launch, like for our Thought Leader Academy, we'll obviously send more frequent, more, extra emails about the Thought Leader Academy, either to the entire list, and then we'll narrow down to people who've expressed interest. Besides launch periods, which obviously has a lot more email activity than regular time, do you recommend just a weekly cadence? Bi-weekly? Is it like, when is it too many emails?
I like to shoot for every week, but I know my audience. I don't know. Maybe your thought leaders like this too, where sometimes they get in this bad habit of like all or nothing, where it's like, oh, well, I missed a week. And then a week turns into like 3 weeks. I call it like that Thursday night feeling from like dieting and stuff. Like week 3, most people also fall off the horse. So I want them to avoid that. Ideally, just like you're doing, you want to show up every single week. And even if it's not a launch week, which I realize we didn't define launch, but just in case, it's when you are focusing a marketing campaign on something that usually either like a bonus is expiring, it's open and closed, like you said, for the Thought Leader Academy, because I don't believe that's open all the time. So that's really just what a launch is something that you are putting a lot more attention towards. Usually there could be a bonus, not be a bonus, any of that sort of stuff. So I'm a big fan of the weekly newsletter because while I would love for you to send it like you do every day on Tuesday, I think that's really great so people can expect it. It's like, ooh, like it's coming up. What's going to be in there, right? As long as you get one out, that's all that I'm going for. That's all that I'm going for. Because if you break it down for most months, you're only looking at 4 emails. And I feel like you can handle 4 emails. You can pull out a calendar. It's one of the things that we teach my students. You can pull out a calendar. And if you're not quite sure what your content is going to be, or you're not quite sure because maybe you're waiting to hear back from something, you can be like, okay, week 1, I want to do like a thought leader piece. Week 2, like something that just annoyed me recently. So you can kind of like write a little bit about that. Week 3, I'm going to send them because I was a guest on something. And then week 4, I'm going to send them just like some resources that I enjoy that help me and that's going to help them in the same reason that they think of me. There you go. Now all of a sudden you didn't overthink it. You can write them all at once and schedule them out if you want to, or you can just have them on your calendar. And what's really nice is that all of a sudden you're like, oh, I could do this and this. So you're, again, treat people like people. You're narrowing it down to, oh, it's just 4. I can handle 4. And even if you are sending people away every email to like the podcast, so they might be like, oh, well, I don't need to open this because I know it's just going to the podcast and I already subscribe. Put something different up in the top. Talk about something else. Talk about a bonus tip. Talk about what's going on with, however you want to relate to your audience. And then when you're sending people to your YouTube, your podcast, again, because as a thought leader, it's really important that you pick your medium. Hint the series that you're doing that's so great, right? Obviously, I'm assuming you're all subscribing for this. Then you can give a little bit of intrigue. Like, you won't believe the one thing, and you don't have to do this like this, very grandiose, but. And in this interview, Kate talks about the one thing you don't want to do in your emails. Why the promotions tab is actually the best place to be, and who writes the best emails. And it's like, ooh, so you're not giving away exactly what it's in. You're creating a little bit of intrigue. You're giving them like, oh yeah, I want to find out what this is. Sometimes as well, and this is especially if you have a free gift, or maybe you are doing a launch, right? So say that you are doing like a special video series or something for the Thought Leader Academy, whether it's a webinar or just, something special that you're doing even like as a pre-launch activity. You might be like, pay close attention to minute 5, because that's where I tell you what Cindy did to land that $10,000 client. And then all of a sudden, people are going to want to know what's at Mint 5. So they're going to go and listen.
Okay, Kate, thank you so much for writing my show notes and my email copy for the week that this episode airs. I am so grateful. I'm going to go through and transcribe this section. No, but this was so helpful, because my next question I was going to ask you about is, thinking about email. And as I mentioned, and I know many podcasters and content creators do this, where their email newsletter is basically a recap of whatever their podcast episode is for that week. And I know when I get those newsletters from those podcasters, I'm like, oh, I already saw your podcast in my feed, so I don't need to read this email. And there may be other good stuff in their email, like sales promotions, but as a recipient, I'm kind of just skipping that. I'm deleting it. So I've been really trying to think about how to better use email, especially for podcasters and content creators, where you're not just kind of recapping the podcast episode and promoting the podcast episode. I love the way that you just teased it, the way that you tease the episode. What else can we do in our emails, whether it's an email newsletter or some other type of email, where we need to promote the podcast or the piece of content, but we don't want the audience to feel like, oh, I've already seen that?
I think then it all comes down to making the top half of the email interesting. So again, like say for this one, if it is, even though that you are a thought leader and you love to create content and you love pushing this thing, this could be a medium that you're struggling with. So technically your subject line could be something like, the one thing in my business I'm the worst at. So now they're going to be like, not that Carol's bad at email for the record, but they'd be like, what is she bad at? So it's not the title of the podcast. It's not email marketing with Kate Doster or any of that sort of stuff. And then at the top, you talk about like, it's this, not, but sometimes you don't know to send anything, which is why we're interviewing. Another thing that you could do if you think you don't have podcasts for your sort of main medium source for your thought leader development. I love the name of that academy. It's so good. So you could go ahead, and my favorite line ever in any email is, which got me thinking about. So if your person most closely resembles you and like you can have a more casual relationship with your subscribers. I mean, I once talked about how I locked my keys in the trunk of my car because I didn't want to spill my iced coffee. And I turned it into a sales email. And we made a crap ton of money off of that sales email, because it's like, so yesterday I went to Dollar Tree and I wasn't paying attention because I didn't want to knock over my iced coffee, and I locked my keys in the trunk and the seats don't fall down and we couldn't do this. It was like 90 degrees again. Whole thing. I literally took a picture of myself because I'm like, this is gonna make a great email. Took a picture of myself by the trunk of the car, like just so heat, which got me thinking about how a lot of people are so concerned about Instagram or TikTok and all these other little things that are fun and delicious, like the iced coffee, but they're forgetting about the thing that turns over the engine, which is the relationship with their email list, right? So you sort of connect those two dots for people. And that's one of those things that feel like, Kate, I'm not that creative. You just start. Look around at your desk. Be like, okay, like, how can I talk about this half-eaten bowl and relate it to whatever I normally talk about? And when you're a thought leader, you're following Carol, right? You're going to know the downfalls of everything. You're going to have those opinions about things again. And so this is how you can sort of weave that in there. It sort of gives them their own little thing. And then towards the bottom, you can talk about the podcast. Usually I'd say try to have the top half and the bottom half be related, but it's your list, spice it up. Maybe someday it's not. Maybe someday the podcast is just a PS. It's like, oh yeah, and PS on the show, I actually went into my 3 tools that I think every speaker needs to have.
The examples that you gave were brilliant, Kate, and they're stories. They're little anecdotes, little scenes in your life.
Yeah, they don't have to be exciting, y'all. It can be stats. If you consider yourself to have the most boring life ever, which I guarantee you, everybody thinks they have the most boring life ever. Stats. I'm making this up. It's like, did you know that like 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs are left-handed? Pontificate on that thought. Again, you wouldn't use the word pontificate in your email, but muse on about that thought. And then, which got me thinking about this. Start with a stat, because then they're going to be like, well, after they read it, they're going to go to their friend, their spouse, and be like, did you know that all these entrepreneurs have left hands? So now all of a sudden they're the cool kid because they're relating that cool kid fact that you shared. So you're going to be the coolest.
All right, Kate. Well, I cannot wait to subscribe to your email newsletter, your email list. I know I'm going to be entertained. I'm going to enjoy reading them. Number one, but number two, I know I'm going to learn a lot from seeing what you do. So speaking of which, your own email list, anything that you would like to try with email that you haven't yet?
I don't really think so. I mean, it's always on the to-do list. I'm always all about like updating like my autoresponder sequences and things of that nature. Sometimes I'll try segmenting. I think learning the tool that you have can be really interesting. So this isn't something that I try because I just do it, but like ActiveCampaign and ConvertKit, they have conditional messaging. So I could potentially send a sales email about, say, my bigger course, Love Your List, and say, I could have it where it's talking about like all these things instead of Love Your List. And then the people that haven't purchased are going to get the actual sales pitch in the link, right? But the people that have purchased, they're going to get a special message instead that's like, which is why you need to go watch module 2. So that way it's reminding them to go and do their purchase. So that way I don't necessarily have to create 2 different emails that week or like not necessarily talk to somebody. So I love that. I've been loving sending the little audios. People have appreciated that.
Oh, wait. No, tell me more about that.
The audios?
Yeah.
Oh, so, and we're talking like very unfancy here, everybody, even though I do have my podcast, I have Inbox Besties. It was last week, and I wanted to talk about, big promotions. At the time that we're recording this, it's a little bit early, everybody. So I wanted to just like talk about tips that people could do to make the most out of the big sales opportunity that's coming up for everybody. And so I was like, I feel like writing this. So I just opened up my recording app, recorded it, shoved it into Google Drive, and was like, hey, I recorded 2 free trainings. If you're going to be selling your own stuff, click here, because maybe you're not quite sure what you want to sell. Or if you plan on making a lot of money with affiliate deals in a couple of weeks, click here, listen to this audio training. Sometimes it can just be one for everyone where you can just be like, I recorded you a message and record them a message. It can be video. You can use something like Loom, Loom. I love Loom because they'll host your video for you. 5 minutes on the free plan. I use it so much. I mean, it's the best, like what's it, $10 a month that I spend. So they could have all of my money. I don't care.
It's like Zoom. It's like Zoom. Like Zoom can have all my money and Loom can have all my money.
Yeah, they're the best. They're very rarely do they go down. Like they're hands down my favorite. So just test it out. Send it. Even something like, you remember, I don't think it's that popular anymore, but do you remember SpeakPipe?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You could record your message on SpeakPipe and just send it to them. Something I think that we might try, like I don't record myself reading my messages because I know I will not stick to what I say in that message, but I have seen a couple of people that are like, hey, no time to read, click here to listen. I know, I think one person has like a private podcast. Another person would just do what I did, where she would just put it up into like, Google Drive, and you could listen to it that way. So that could be something fun.
Yeah, these are great ideas, Kate. One thing that I do like about some of the email newsletters that I get is that and Angie Trueblood does this in hers, and I know we're mutual fans of Angie, and she's been on this podcast before, is putting in funny GIFs.
Yes.
Right? And so I need to get better about doing that. What is the best way to find those? Usually I just open Google and I'll just do like funny GIF and then whatever the kind of what I'm looking for, like the description of what I'm looking for. Is there a better way?
I think it's Jiffy. And the other one I want to say is Tenor. I like to pick GIFs that kind of suit my brand. So I'm a little pop culture and I'm a giant nerd face. So like I'll make sure that mine are usually like something from like Schitt's Creek or like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Parks and Rec, because people know that I like those things and those shows sort of correlate with my energy. Actually, the email that I literally sent just before we recorded this had one from Family Matters. It was talking about how, you buy one of those like tiny offers and then you never open it or watch it. And I was like, #guilty. And it's like, did I do that? It's like, I did do that. I've done that a lot. So those can be really, really fun. And you just drag them in to your emails like you would any image. So you would right click from, again, those Tenors, Jiffy, any of those sites, and then save it as image. And then you just drag it into your email as an image and it should work.
That's a great point, though, about making sure that the GIFs match your own brand voice and your personality versus just randomly pulling one that people would never associate with you.
Right, exactly. So like my people, most of them tend to be millennial ladies, so they get it, and they're like, "Yeah, this makes a lot of sense." She would use a David meme in here, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it helps people to get to know a little bit more about you too, and like just your personality and your interests and your tastes and what you like.
And people will read the sentence after it the most. So make sure it's an important sentence.
Oh, all right. Good tip, Kate. Wow. You have been a wealth of information. I have learned so much. I know you have your own podcast called Inbox Besties. So I recommend listeners going over in their podcast app and checking that out. And Kate, where else can listeners connect with you?
If you're like, but I still don't know what to send my email list, no worries. Obviously, if you want to search Inbox Besties after you're done leaving a rating and review for the Speaking Your Brand podcast, so leave that first. Then go search for Kate in Inbox Besties. It'll come up. You can go to katedoster.com/speaking your brand. So I did put in the hyphens, but I can do a link without the hyphens as well. So Speaking Your Brand, the name of the great show. And you can get my 2 years worth of email ideas. So basically, you don't have to worry about what to email your list until 2024 at this point. So I give you sentence starters. I even treat people like people, break it down by months. So if you happen to be listening to this way in the future and you're like, oh my goodness, it's May. It turns out that January through April come back the next year. So it's fine. You're not missing anything. Just cycle back through and you will be good. Technically, you'll have half of 2025 done at that point. So you don't need to worry about it. So we break it down by week, what you can send. I have some students that just follow it religiously. I have some that like to spice it up. I have some that just like to dirt all over the place. But again, I want to make this easy as possible. So it's like, send your mistakes, send a 1-sentence email, talk about your most favorite purchase. We try to have at least one moneymaker, if you will, a month. So there you go.
That is a fantastic resource, Kate. Thank you so much. That's katedoster.com/speaking-your-brand. And I'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes. And what is your favorite social media platform to hang out on?
I love hanging out on Instagram. Instagram stories is my favorite. You will see not a lot of business stuff on my Instagram stories. It is Kate_Doster. So my last name. But again, because I'm a personal brand, I like to share what's going on in my actual life. And it's just, I love my business and it's great. We talk about that a little bit, but you'll see a lot of me working out because I'm working on my deadlifts and sometimes I'll play the ukulele and we'll have a little Q&As and overrated, underrated. I have a blast over there on Instagram.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to follow you there and include that link in the show notes as well. Kate, thank you so much for coming on the Speaking Your Brand podcast. I so appreciate your time and your insights.
I appreciate you too.
Thanks again to Kate for coming on the podcast. She was such a great guest. Make sure to grab her download. If you would like to get on the Speaking Your Brand email list to see how I'm experimenting with the emails that we send out, you can do so by going to speakingyourbrand.com/guide. That will also get you our free thought leadership workbook. So that's speakingyourbrand.com/guide. And don't forget that enrollment is open for our Thought Leader Academy. You can get all of the details and apply by going to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Until next time, thanks for listening.